Hey, what's up, everyone? It is Lucy here. I am joined by Jeremy.
Hi there.
Tina.
Hello.
And Zach.
Hey.
Now, we are here because we are talking about something a little controversial. We have updated IGN's top 100 games of all time.
That's right.
Now, the list was last updated last year, so we haven't made massive changes. It's not a complete overhaul. It is a partial overhaul. How are we all feeling about the changes?
I think it came out great. I mean, obviously, top 100s are so contentious in general. You said it's a controversial topic. Mm-hmm. It's tough to get everybody's interests in there, but we try as much as possible to get all of our staff represented. All of our staff has a variety of tastes, and we also try to kind of update it to be more modern, but still respectful of the previous generations that have informed video games today.
It's really exciting to see this list kind of get revamped for the office that is IGN right now, and that's really cool to me.
Yeah, and I think we are seeing a lot of sort of younger tastes coming in. As Tina mentioned, this is kind of, it's slightly modernized. We're focusing less this year on influence. Mm-hmm. So games aren't we're not really counting the influence of games. We're counting whether they're still fun to play.
Yeah, that would be like a separate list, I think.
That is going to be a separate list.
We talked about that. We covered it all.
Exactly. Look, let's dive into our biggest changes.
Sure.
We moved Zelda Ocarina of Time out of the top 10. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that decision.
The top 20. It actually dropped all the way down to 25. And I think that this is probably the most prime example of what we talk about when we talk about influence versus modern playability. Mm-hmm. Ocarina of Time, got a remake or a remaster for the 3DS not too awful long ago, but even that game now, to go back to it, it's a little bit cumbersome. It shows its age, I think, in a pretty obvious way, and especially when you consider games like Breath of the Wild, which is so innovative and so new, or games like Link to the Past, which is so timeless and damn near perfect. It's hard to argue that this mutable or I guess transitional entry into the saga is still an amazing, it is still an amazing game, but to think about how that plays today in comparison to some of the older games and the newest game, it is a little bit controversial.
It's like the middle school version of Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's definitely a controversial move to drop it that low, but I feel confident in that it is still, I think the thing that you need to take into consideration when talking about any game on this list is that these are the top 100 games of all time, out of every single video game ever made. So 25 is still really, really great. It's just that initial shock of, Ocarina being some people's most favorite game they might see.
And it's certainly a topic of conversation that we went through back and forth with a lot of people. We don't make these decisions lightly by any means.
We've got another Zelda game in our top 10 now, and that is, of course, Breath of the Wild. Now, last year, Breath of the Wild was not in our top 10, but we as a collective group decided that it was definitely worthy of, it's number 5, in fact. Mm-hmm. How do you guys feel about that?
It's so appropriate. I mean, so many of our staff members talk about that game to this day consistently. Yeah. You would almost think it's every year's game of the year just for the rest of time. And interestingly, from just a traffic data standpoint, it's one of our most high trafficking game help guides as well. So it's clear that our audience feels the same way.
It's up there every day, and everybody who doesn't already love it is probably replaying it or rediscovering it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very, very, very happy with the Breath of the Wild decision, personally.
It was Lucy the whole time.
It was me the whole time. We also made, it's a significant change. I don't think it's quite as sort of shocking as the other two. We swapped Portal out. So Portal was originally in last year's list number 3, the first Portal. Now it's number 17. And we swapped it out with Portal 2. So Portal 2 is now number 3. It was number 11. I think that Portal 2 is the superior game. I think it should always have been at number 3.
1,000%. That was an error that we eradicated.
I just think that they're both brilliant games, but I think in hindsight, Portal 2 is just number 1.
I think if you add in a more developed, more cohesive story, an incredible co-op campaign, and then you just take into consideration the overall added value to Portal 2, it makes Portal 2 a stronger game. And what it does is it takes the innovation and the sort of surprise factor of the original Portal and builds on that in a way that is oh yeah, this is more of an excellent thing. So why not?
Still got the catchy song.
Yeah, true.
I think
But beyond the
characterization.
catchy song, an amazing soundtrack that like
true.
immediately after I played that game, I was just hunting for it and like begging PR, like send me something so I can just listen to this for the rest of time.
Yeah.
I think Portal, the original Portal, being where it was just another one of those sort of like influence over modern playability sort of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like the line of business that we're in, we're constantly churning from one game to the next, but Portal 2 is the game that I consistently replay like once a year. And I don't say that, gently. It's a time consumer to go back to older games, but it's well worth it and it holds up for sure.
Exactly.
The acting, the puzzles, the co-op, as you mentioned.
Robot.
Yeah.
Great robot.
Great robots.
Great robots.
Some of the best.
Other changes, we swapped out Halo and Halo 2. So Halo was 13, now it's 23. Halo 2 is now 13. I mean, again, this is, I think we're going to actually see a common theme with some of our decisions on this list. As we have been mentioning, these are games like Halo had such a massive influence throughout the games industry that Halo 2 is the better game. So I think that was very much a no-brainer for us. We have added in God of War, of course. Now that was always gonna be in our top 100. It was released last year, it was our game of the year. We put it in at number 29, which I think is completely fine. I can see it, I can see that one again also creeping further up as time goes by.
For sure.
But for now, I think 29 is a good spot for it.
It's also one of those things where if you have a different, more contained list, if it's just like, Sony exclusives or something like that, you might see it ranked differently, but when it's in the top 100, there are so many considerations that just kind of like move things around organically in that way, and you just kind of like, well, it fits in 29 considering everything else that's going on there. Not that you would, off the top of your head be like, yeah, that's a 29th
That's a
best game of all
29.
time. Like, it's definitely going to fit in there mathematically, that's what it tells me to do.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's an incredible game, and I can see it moving up higher. We swapped Smash Brothers Melee for Smash Brothers Ultimate.
I feel like this is probably one of the most contentious decisions on the list.
That one's pretty controversial.
And it was
around here.
it was also quite. We polled for it, so I feel like it was a very, very sort of diplomatic decision. But it was also quite late in the game that we made this call. I'm not a Smash Brothers player. I'm not a hardcore Smash Brothers player. How do you feel about it, Zach?
I think that Smash Brothers Melee has this very specific place in history because it is the game that the fighting community still loves. It is a game that kind of defined in the way that Assassin's Creed 2 took what Assassin's Creed did and made it this entirely different thing. Smash Brothers Melee did that for the original Smash, and this game, Ultimate, I feel like does that for Melee.
Yeah.
In that it is a refinement of the mechanics, an incredible addition to the roster, and it's just like such a massive love. I won't even say love letter. It's like a love tome to Nintendo overall, right? Because it's all the music, all the stages, all the characters, all the references, and so that for me was the thing that clinched the deal on this. When we talked about swapping Melee off for what is in essentially like a beefed up version of Melee, it kind of made sense to me that way.
And it does speak to our decision-making process where we know which ones are going to be a little bit more contentious. We know when to kind of diversify how we're actually approaching which should take the place of which other one. And we try to go into those things with those considerations, knowing that this is the context around this game and this series.
Also, Pear said to do it. So.
Yeah, and then we have to listen to it.
We also made a couple of decisions regarding The Witcher 3 and Shadow of the Colossus. Shadow of the Colossus was moved down, Witcher 3 was moved up. I think Witcher 3 is one of those games people are just, it is so profoundly good. And I think that, I'm not actually sure where it was sitting before, but we have moved it to 28.
It was pretty far down, and
I want to say it was in the 70s. But.
yeah, I was a big advocate of moving that one up. In fact, I would have moved it up higher.
Yeah.
It's just so good. I think about it pretty frequently. I'm reading the books right now, which I had put off. Finally, I'm doing it because I'd been playing Thronebreaker and just got back into the world, and I just remember how good that game feels, and how fun it is, how beautiful it is. It's just it's really hard to top.
I think that there are a certain number of games each generation that completely take over the conversation at IGN, and it's all anybody can talk about for a few weeks. Like Breath of the Wild was that way, Metal Gear Solid 5 was that way, The Witcher is that way. And there are some of those games that you talk about them for a few months and they fall off. but The Witcher is one of those things that is constantly being brought up in the office, and it's like, oh yeah, this is kind of like XYZ in The Witcher, or it reminds me a lot of the way that this feels in The Witcher. And so like those are the kinds of things that we have to take into consideration when making a list like this, because it's like, yeah, that's still a huge part of our conversation nearly every day.
Yep, agreed. And with that in mind, I think our decision to swap out Fallout New Vegas with Fallout 3 is another, it speaks to that very much. Like Fallout New Vegas is kind of the Fallout game, especially in this office, like the way that we talk about it with such reverence. Fallout 3 is, again, fantastic game, but I think Fallout New Vegas pips it. And we've made some other new additions, and to sort of make room for those additions, we did remove some Nintendo games.
You gotta kill your babies sometimes.
Kill your darlings. So we removed Wind Waker, Majora's Mask. I'm so sorry. I'm just I can hear myself saying this, and I'm just I can just feel the audience going, what are you doing? Original Legend of Zelda, Super Mario Odyssey, and Super Mario Galaxy. Again, fantastic games, but we did decide that Mario and Zelda in particular were overrepresented on our original list last year.
I mean, as an agent of chaos, I was sort of pushing to really shake up this list, and my biggest issue with it, as much as I love those Nintendo titles and grew up with them and everything, there were 9 Mario games and 10 Zelda games. It was just so many, and as much as I love those games, many of them are somewhat duplicative. If we can't have New Vegas and Fallout 3, then how can we have Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time and Mario Brothers and Mario 3 and Mario World? It's a lot.
Now, we're running out of time, so I just want to quickly run through our other additions and our other removals. If you feel really strongly about any of these as I run through them, please speak up. Our other additions include Left 4 Dead 2.
Yes.
Let's hear it.
So real quick, Left 4 Dead 2 included all of the maps from Left 4 Dead 1, and it has the dual wielding ability, and it has one of the most amazing glitches of all time, where you could produce a lot of pistols to lag out the game so that you can play expert mode in a much easier way. But now I'm getting too in the weeds, so go ahead.
I love how we've just gone into a personal Tina story. Yeah. Rise of the Tomb Raider, Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, Red Dead Redemption 2, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Fable 2 Fortnite, Resident Evil 2 Remake, which is a contender for Game of the Year this year, I'm sure, for many people, Monster Hunter World, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
I can't believe there was no Tony Hawk games. Before we got to this.
Special. Thank you,
That's
Jeremy.
madness.
Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, Dishonored, Divinity, Original Sin 2, and Borderlands 2.
Oh, I love those last 3 a lot too.
And finally, our other removals are Team Fortress 2, Warcraft 2, Fallout 3, Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yes, I'd like to object.
All right.
I think Metal Gear Solid 2 is one of the most important video games ever made, and I think what Kojima did in an era of information control, he built a game about controlling information and used marketing to control the information about his game about controlling information is unbelievable, but I think it was omitted from this
So
list.
yeah, let's just go ahead and add that to the influential list then.
That's
Thank you very much.
I know that it was omitted from this list because it is more about.
You gonna go play that game after this, or?
Playability. I love it. I actually recently replayed it probably 2 years ago. Still
Still a brilliant game. Galaga, Grim Fandango, Banjo-Kazooie, and Oregon Trail. Now listen, as someone who did not grow up in the United States, Oregon Trail is completely foreign to me, but apparently it's all very
Really
prolific
foreign,
for
yeah.
young
Yeah.
Americans.
I mean, I feel like that one's like a novelty, like maybe it was in there as a joke or something.
No,
Yeah.
I mean we've previously had a lot of old school PC folks on our staff, and so Oregon Trail was a very important game to them growing up, and so it's one of those things that as our staff gets younger or as our staff moves away from certain genres or games, 60% of us didn't grow up with Oregon Trail. I personally did. I'm an old man, but that's okay. I'm old enough to know Oregon Trail, but not of the age that it was of a particular influence to me. So omitting it was not a difficult decision.
It didn't feel on par with the rest of the games on the list, and it's certainly part of a culture. I mean, we've memified the hell out of Oregon Trail, and it's really representative of a lot of the jokes and some of the style too. But that's why it should be on the influential list.
Yeah, it definitely
instead
felt
of
like an old man in the back, waving the stick,
yeah.
being like, "Remember me."
It's still supremely funny to name your Oregon Trail folks after people that you didn't like, and then they die of dysentery. That's hilarious.
Exactly.
That does does never get old. I mean, I was a little bummed to see Fallout 3 go out, just because, again, you know, I don't see why you can't have 2 Fallout games, but you can have 57 Nintendo games in there. But you know, whatever. You know, and like TF2 is like a game that people are still having fun with, and as somebody who was like really big into the whole like, you know, machinima animation phase on YouTube and everything like that, like, oh yeah, turns out yes, TF2 was like the go-to. You know, like it was so fun to see what people were doing with that, and so it kind of holds a little bit of a special place in my heart, almost more for like the community around it than the game itself. So yeah, I guess I'm just talking myself into putting it on the influential list.
Well, I mean, I hope that this is a reminder for everyone watching that IGN is not a one-brained entity, that we are a company made up of individuals with many different opinions.
And from across the globe.
Exactly.
We're a global site.
Across the globe as well. But that is our top 100 update. Please feel free to tell us why we're right and why we're wrong in the comments below. And for everything else, stick with IGN. Thank you.